Hello everyone, it's Mrs. Slight from Holy Family here. I'm going to be going through the phonics workshop with you to let you know how we teach phonics in reception at Holy Family and to give you some ideas of what things you can do to help out. I'm going to share my screen with some slides on and I'm going to talk over the top of the presentation so that I can give you a little bit more information. Okay? Sorry, let me just... Okay. So at Holy Family, we teach letters and sounds. Letters and Sounds is a 6-phase teaching program that's used across the school. Phase 1 supports the linking of sounds and letters and is an introduction into phonics, and this is usually covered in nursery. Phonics at a glance. Phonics is the skill of segmenting and blending as well as the knowledge of the alphabetic code. So children need to understand the sounds that letters make, and they need to be able to segment those sounds to read, and they need to be able to blend those sounds together to be able to make simple words. Phonics consists of identifying sounds in spoken words, recognizing the common spellings of each phoneme, blending phonemes into words for reading, and segmenting words into phonemes for spelling. There's some definitions, because I know this terminology can be quite confusing. A phoneme, this is the smallest unit of sound in a word. So if we have the word cat, how many phonemes can you hear? Okay, there would be 3. K, a, and t. K, a, t. K, at, cat. 3 phonemes in the word cat. Now we have the graphemes. Graphemes are the letters that represent the phoneme. Children need to practice recognizing the grapheme and saying the phoneme that it represents. So they need to know the letter name and also the sound it makes. So for example, they need to know the letter S makes the sound S. The letter A makes the sound A. The letter T makes the sound T. A phoneme is something that you hear, and a grapheme is something that you see. And a word always has the same number of phonemes and graphemes. So in reception, we begin with phase 2 of letters and sounds, and we start to practice letter recognition for reading and recall for spelling. We start with the phase 2 sounds in this order, and we teach 4 sounds a week, and we recap these throughout the week. Our phonics is quite repetitive, and it's a really good way to encourage the children to learn the sounds, to recognise the letter names, and to be able to start making their words. Our phonics sessions are fun. They involve lots of speaking and listening and lots of games. To ensure letter progression, we teach the 5 sets of sounds and we focus on 1 set per week. But each lesson, we recap what has come before. So we have a look at the sound that came the day before or the day before, and we gradually build up. So we are constantly recapping the sounds. In our daily phonics lesson, children are exposed to the sound and are shown the cursive letter formation. This can be quite tricky for children to begin with, but we believe if we start this in reception, it really helps with their handwriting as we progress throughout school. The children are given the opportunity to practice writing the sound of the day using a variety of media. So one day they might be writing on whiteboards, the next day they might be writing in the sand tray, the next day they might be creating rainbow letters with pastels or pens, lots of different ways for them to practice their sound and make it fun and enjoyable for them. The children will work independently to apply their phonic knowledge, as well as working with both the class teacher and the teaching assistant or the early years practitioner at Holy Family. We also rotate our groups so that the teacher works with every group across the week, and the children will also work with another adult across the week. To conclude the phonics session, children take part in games and activities based around the sound of the day. And as we progress on further, we start to introduce other words and start to introduce sentence structure as well. But the end is always a recap, and it's always a game to make it more fun for the children. Pronunciation. Your child will be taught to pronounce the sounds, phonemes, correctly to make blending easier. If you're supporting your child with the sounds, try to avoid adding an sound after the consonants. For example, b or k, and try to keep the sound short and sharp. B, k. To clarify any sounds that you are unsure of, we use a really useful website, which is mrthorne.com. And he's got lots of fun videos for children. He's also got lots of information for parents, and he can help you to understand how to pronounce the sounds. When we are segmenting and blending, when children are confident with the sounds, we'll begin to segment words to be able to read them. For example, when they have learnt k, a, and t, we will start to show them how to segment words and also blend sounds together to make short CVC words, consonant, vowel, consonant words. We also merge our sounds together and blend the words so that we can read words on the page. So, for example, in van, we would encourage the children to split up the word v, a, n. We also teach children to use their hands to help them v, a, n. So head for the first sound, middle or shoulders for the middle sound, and knees for the end sound. V, a, n, v, a, n, v, an, van. And this is a really useful way to help the children to see that the sounds are separate and then know that they can be pushed together and blended together. In the classroom, we encourage children to be independent learners. They have the opportunity to consolidate their phonics skills by using resources in the classroom, the indoor classroom and the outdoor classroom. There's a range of games and activities available each day. Simple things such as magnetic letters and whiteboards for them to be able to move around letters and make their own words, pens, sound cards, matching sound games, puzzles, tracing. Lots of things that are incorporated into our phonics lessons, but also can be used in their choosing time in the classroom. We also will move on to learning our tricky words. Tricky words are really, really important for reading and writing. Tricky words are the words that cannot be sounded out. So these cannot be segmented on your body. These words are sight words, they just have to be learnt. For example, the or to. If you were to sound out to, it will be to. So it doesn't work. Tricky words must just be learnt. We have lots of resources in school that we can also send out, and we will be sending out to you at home to help you. Tricky word trees, tricky word strips, bookmarks with the tricky words on, just so that every time you're reading with your child, you can be showing them the tricky words and practicing them and pointing them out in the books. When you are reading with your child, it's unlikely to begin with that the children will recognise these tricky words. So it's useful to point out to them, this is a tricky word. This is how we say the tricky words, and see if they can start to recognise them as they are repeated throughout the books. The children are exposed to these words on a daily basis, and they'll see these words regularly within their reading books. It's vital that these are practiced as much as possible to ensure they can apply them in their reading and writing. We have phase 2 tricky words and phase 3 tricky words, so they are taught alongside our sounds across the week, and again, we recap these every day to make sure that the children have a good, solid understanding of these. When children have completed phase 2 letters and sounds, and they are confident with all of the phonemes, we move on to phase 3 letters and sounds. As you can see from this table below, phase 3 letters and sounds includes some single letters, J, V, W, and X, and then it moves on to digraphs, which are 2 letters that make one sound, for example, ch, sh, a, e, and then we have some trigraphs as well, which is 3 letters that make one sound, such as air or I. We also move on to some trickier sounds in this phase, and we think about how we start to make words and put the sounds together. So, for example, knowing that k becomes at the beginning of a word. So how can you help? At home, there's lots of things you can do to support us with phonics. You can sing an alphabet song together to encourage the children to know the alphabet and know the letter names. But a really good way to do this as well, which can be quite tricky for the children, is to change this. Instead of saying A, B, C, you can do it with the sounds instead. So a, b, k, and see if they can think of words when playing I Spy that start with the sound. So rather than the letter, things that start with the sound. I spy with my little eye something beginning with a, and see if they can think of other words that begin with a. You can play with magnetic letters if you have these at home. You can practice the tricky words given. You can play pairs, and this can be as simple as writing out 2 sounds on a piece of paper or lots of different sounds, muddling them up and seeing if they can match the t and the t together, or the at and the at together. You can play Snap, lots of other card games, and just write these on a piece of paper, and it'll be a really fun game for them. You can also practice the cursive letter formation, and we can send home a sheet to help you with this because some of the letters are quite tricky. The children will find this tricky at first, but we do this every day, and we teach them where to start their letter, and we remind them that their letters must sit on the line, that they lead in, they finish their letter, and they lead out again. Not all children will learn at the same rate. Phonics is really tricky for some children, and we will support your child whatever rate of their learning. There's a very close link between difficulty with phonics and hearing. So if your child's progress with phonics starts to slow, we might have a conversation with you and ask if their hearing needs checking, just to make sure that they can hear the sounds that we're talking about. Don't worry if they get some of the sounds wrong. The sounds and the words are really hard to remember, and they need plenty of practice. And if you're ever concerned, you can ask us for help and support with phonics or tricky words, and we'll point you in the right direction so that you can support them at home. Again, with our phonics, we have the opportunity to work with all children in the classroom, so we can see if a particular child or a group of children are struggling with the sounds, and then we can recap that sound and make sure they have a solid understanding of that sound before we move on to another sound. We also assess the children with their phonic sounds at the beginning of a half term and at the end of the half term to see how many sounds they have learnt and to see where their gaps are. We will also let you know where their gaps are with their sounds so that you can focus on particular sounds and so that you can support them by recapping these more often than the other sounds that they are quite confident with. Where can you go to find out more? If you would like to find out a little bit more about letters and sounds, which is the document that we use, you can go onto the National Strategies website and just search for letters and sounds. You'll be able to see the book online and see all of the different phases. There's lots of ideas in there as well for you that talk about the different phases and explain in a little bit more detail. There's also some useful websites that we use. We like to use games in class, especially at the end, to recap, because the children don't realise they're applying their phonic knowledge in order to play these games. So there's ictgames.com, and if you go to the literacy section, you'll find lots of phonic games. And if you choose the phase 2 for now, that will be appropriate for the children. If you go on to lettersandsounds.com, there are lots of games on there that the children will be familiar with because we use them at school. Again, they are sorted into phases, so start with phase 2. There may also be some tricky words games. We have phonics play as well, which we use a lot at school. The children will play the pirate treasure game. They will also play Ob and Bob with the aliens. And this is when we start to move the children on to start sorting their words into real and pseudo words. This helps them to prepare for their phonics check in year 1, and this is to help with their decoding. So they sound out the words and they decide whether thumbs up, it's a real word, or thumbs down, it's a pseudo word, which means it's a word that doesn't make sense. It's not a word that they would be able to write or they would find in a book. They use their blending skills to attempt any word, and they can sort those into the aliens. And we'll have a look at those as well in class. There's also oxfordowl.co.uk, which is a really useful website for phonics as well as for reading. And there's lots of reading books on there to support your child at the appropriate phonics level. So you will be able to read some of those on the screen just to give you something different to do. Maybe if your child finishes their reading book and you feel like they need an extra challenge, or you want to do something different just to keep them interested, visit Oxford Owl because it's really, really useful. With reading, we ask you to read as often as possible. We ask you to record their reading progress in their reading record book for us and send this into school every day. We will change books every day to ensure that children have an opportunity to access different books. If you haven't had a chance to read a book and you would like to keep a book for longer, just put a little note in the reading record for us and we can let you keep that book for a little bit longer. Sometimes as the children progress and the books get longer, you might want to split the book over a couple of nights, and that's absolutely fine. We also encourage reading for pleasure. So as well as reading the school books and working on the phonics, please make sure that you're reading books for pleasure as well at home. Children really love being read to, and it's so important for their vocabulary and their phonics skills if you are reading regularly to them more difficult books, storybooks that they enjoy, storybooks that they can interact with. So that's really, really important to do that. So that's all that we have on our phonics workshop today. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch and we can point you in the right direction. Remember to read regularly at home, encourage a love of reading and show children a range of different books. Lots of different ways to do reading as well. If your child is getting slightly fed up with reading the school books, you can always play some of the phonic games as well, just to encourage them and to focus on their tricky word and phonics. Because when their phonics skills improve and when we build on their learning and development in the classroom, you will see a really, really big improvement in their reading at home. Okay. So thank you very much for listening. I hope that was useful. If you do have any other questions about phonics, please let us know. We will be sending home some of the sound cards and the tricky word cards for you to get you started on phase two. When a child is ready to move on, we will move them on to phase three as well, and we will send out some more information about phase three as well. Thank you very much.